Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shields, dead slayers, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm a Useful Idiot. Let's go global today, and as promised, I'm going to do a series of videos that have to do with our election cycle, and this will be the first in the series, focusing in on Sheldon Adelson. And I find it remarkable that we live in an era where a lot of American voters are at least familiar with the machinations of people like George Soros and the Koch brothers, who operate for their respective political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats. Although, of course, they cross lines all the time, because as American history marches on, the difference between the policies of the Republicans and the Democrats are continue to vanish. So, and Sheldon Adelson is no exception. He's given to both sides before, and like other major figures, he in fact used to be a Democrat and became a Republican. But so anyway, for all you people who are interested in the machinations of George Soros and the Koch brothers and the like, take a good look at Sheldon Adelson. He actually towers above all people who are involved in manipulating the American election process. And I say manipulation because Sheldon Adelson, like so many others, is a dual citizen of Israel and the United States, and the fact that he is able to pour hundreds of millions of dollars in the American election cycle when his first allegiance, as stated by him, is to Israel, certainly is a loud commentary on the election process in America. So let's look at Sheldon Adelson. He's a 18th richest person in the world, according to Forbes. He has total assets of $28 billion, and he made his money running casinos in Singapore, Macau, and Las Vegas. And he also owns a free paper in Israel called Israel Hayom, and other Israeli newspapers as well, and also owns a U.S. newspaper, the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Needless to say, both are excellent bullhorns for his pro-Zionist message, both here in the United States and in Israel. He was born in Boston, but like I say, he's a dual citizen of Israel and the United States right now, and he joined the U.S. Army in the early 1950s. Later, he lamented the fact that he was ever wearing an American uniform and wishes he had worn an Israeli Defense Service uniform. But he's really proud of his sons who are going to serve in the Israeli Defense Forces and will make up for his embarrassment. And like I say, he used to support the Democrats because he was, and then he became very anti-union because of his Las Vegas holdings, and therefore switched to the Republican Party. And he's pretty nutty too. People focus in on things that Trump has said and other major figures have said, but here we have Sheldon Adelson, who supports the likes of Mark Rubio and Ted Cruz, who advocated the nuking of Iran as a warning. So there's plenty of nuts to go around out there, and he fights cannabis legalization. And interestingly, because his son died of cocaine and heroin, so naturally, as a person who's completely uninformed, he associates cocaine and heroin death of his son with marijuana, and he's poured millions into stopping the legalization of cannabis, most successfully in Florida recently. And of course, no surprise that he fights internet gambling as well, because it serves as competition for his casinos, his own casinos. And so let's go to some highlights. In 2005, he gave $250,000 to the George W. Bush second inauguration. In 2008, he gave $30 million to Freedom Watch, a super PAC supporting Republican candidates. In 2010, he gave $10 million to Newt Gingrich, super PACs, and tried to support his campaign, even against the likes of Mitt Romney. And he donates to lots of Senate candidates as well. And in fact, in 2012 alone, the last election cycle for president, he gave $92 million to Republican candidates. So I say to my viewers again, someone who gives $100 million, one person who gives $100 million to Republican candidates, and is a citizen of Israel, has some dubious allegiances, and people should be more interested and perhaps outraged by something like that. And $100 million is actually only part of it, because of course he gives money to the Republicans and pro-Zionist causes through all sorts of organizations, and his own wife actually gives her own separate donations as well. So it could be as high as $200 million. And he hedged his bets, of course, with Newt Gingrich, because he ended up giving $10 million to Mitt Romney as well. And since 2000, same person that's dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into the American election cycle gave $140 million to Birthright Israel, which finances Jewish youth trips to Israel. So making sure that all the American Jews get to go over to enjoy the fruits of Israel. And he's also given $5 million to the Israeli army. So he's very serious about his admiration of them. But here's a person who in February 12th in Forbes said, quote, against very wealthy people attempting to influence elections. So in 2012, of course, he was against very wealthy people attempting to influence elections with their money. But he goes on to say in that same quote, but as long as it's doable, I'm going to do it, unquote. And we have statements from him, just like other pro-Zionists, who state bluntly that their first allegiance is to Israel and that their issue is always going to be Israel. In fact, Sheldon Adelson has come out and said that he is a one-issue philanthropist, and that is the issue of Israel. No mention of the United States in there, I would add. So, and of course, Sheldon Adelson is good buddies with all the other neocons and warmongers, and the ones who created the blueprint for perpetual war, Bill Kristol and Elliot Abrams. And Elliot Abrams, of course, has been tapped as an advisor to Ted Cruz right now. And also Sheldon Adelson is a big supporter of Tom Cotton, the one who wrote the letter to Iran, basically saying that the American president doesn't have any authority. And but Sheldon Adelson does have an uphill battle, because 70% of American Jews voted for Obama in 2012, so he has his work cut out for him. But there's, just a glimpse, a snapshot of somebody that needs to be watched, what he does, Sheldon Adelson, and just another huge part of the Israeli global propaganda machinery that not only attacks anyone who criticizes Israeli policies around the globe, but pours hundreds of millions of dollars into the American election cycle and briberies to American officials in order to make sure that they also adhere to the Israeli version of the world. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.